Steven Crowder posted on X about Piers Morgan's interview with Nick Fuentes. So Piers thought he'd invite Crowder to talk about his criticisms. I don't think Piers knew what he had gotten himself into, but I'm so glad that he did. Right off the bat, Piers starts off by reframing Crowder's very valid criticism as a personal insult. Crowder doesn't take the bait. He keeps it procedural. Piers tries to paint the narrative that he was just trying to do his job as a journalist, and Nick got pretty exercised about the story involving his father. Piers continues to deny meaning any harm. He doesn't mention Nick's father by name this time, only that he's easily discoverable, which in itself is definitely a choice. Crowder frames it perfectly. Hey man, my dad's not here to defend himself. Could we move on from that? And then maybe don't do it 6 more times? Crowder's response is devastatingly simple. I counted 6 times. That does 3 things at once. It replaces intent with observable behavior. It anchors the critique in numbers, and it removes the opinion from the argument. Crowder doesn't defend Nick, he defends the process, and in doing so, invokes a universal fairness principle. That forces the audience to ask, why keep doing something you admit you shouldn't have done? Piers never answers that. I wasn't trying to gotcha him. I was trying to put to him all the more contentious things. This is called retrospective justification. Notice the pattern. The criticism lands. Piers explains his intent, ignoring the outcome. Despite claiming it doesn't bother him, Piers repeatedly shifted the conversation back to the response he was receiving following the interview. It's clear that Piers blames Nick for the backlash. He's not interested in self-reflecting. Piers would rather believe that he was too hard on Nick, and that's why people are upset with him. What Piers is doing here is something called responsibility displacement. Crowder handled this moment perfectly by condemning harassment while still holding Piers accountable for creating the conditions. It's why it feels like Crowder's the only adult in the room. When the topic of celibacy came up again, Piers mistakes what Nick said, admits he didn't hear it directly, then psychoanalyzes Nick's motivation. When will people stop listening to people who think they can read people's minds? When Crowder asked, what's fruitful about attacking a celibate Catholic for not getting laid? That one question exposed the pettiness of the line of attack, it removed the moral high ground, and it causes the audience to reassess the interview, not the guest. Piers keeps defending his intentions. Crowder keeps pointing to his actions. Piers repeatedly tries to occupy the moral high ground. I strongly condemn harassment. I don't care if he attacks me. I wouldn't have named his father again if I had my time. This is retroactive virtue signaling. Piers repeatedly tries to occupy the moral high ground. I strongly condemn harassment. I don't care if he attacks me. I wouldn't have named his father again if I had my time. This is retroactive virtue signaling. Crowder exposes this by pointing out, you kept doing it, even after being asked respectfully to stop, even though it advanced nothing intellectually. Piers does this repeatedly. Jokes about Nick getting laid, frames celibacy as pathology, then says, I was joking. Crowder exposes. Crowder's response here is quietly brilliant. He explains why the joke lands as an insult. He explains who it alienates. He explains how it radicalizes instead of clarifies. Because Piers is arguing intent, Crowder's arguing effect. I'm not exactly the logic behind Piers denying playing the gotcha game and then pulling out a clip of Steven Crowder asking Nick yes or no questions in a very gotcha type of way. It completely backfired on him. Crowder asks him point blank, did you watch the entire show? Of course he didn't. As calm as a cucumber, Crowder simply says, one of us came more prepared. That's humiliation without any aggression. I loved it. Repeatedly, Piers says variations of, I came with an open mind. I was trying to see if it was performative. I was listening. I didn't get anywhere, but I tried. I learned more than I knew before. This is an attempt to replace what happened with what Piers meant to do. Piers would prefer that we judge the interview based off of his internal mindset and not by structure, repetition, and the outcome. Crowder never disputes Piers's sincerity. He disputes method and execution, which is why this is such a bad look for Piers. When Piers says, "If I was worried about their comments, I'd turn them off. So bring your worst, you little groypers." This is performative toughness, and it does three things simultaneously. It contradicts. You don't repeatedly mention something you don't care about. It escalates at exit. The jab comes after Crowder de-escalated and addressed the audience calmly. And it causes the audience to misread. Younger viewers don't read this as strength. They read it as a petty loss of control. Crowder says, essentially, if your goal is truth, if your goal is persuasion, this wasn't the way. It's subtle but devastating because he grants Piers moral intent, rejects his method, and reframes success criteria. He never says, "You're malicious, you're corrupt, you're lying." He says, "Your approach gives the other side a win." And he's right. That reframes the entire exchange from values to effectiveness. That's why Piers can't counter it. In the end, everybody shows their true colors. Crowder asking for people to take it easy on Piers. Piers encouraging them to bring their worst. That contrast matters because closing energy lingers. Crowder leaves viewers thinking, that was measured. Piers leaves viewers thinking, he still doesn't get it.